Hey guys, welcome to our first assignment. It is super important for every artist to have a sketchbook. So we are going to make one together today. To start, you'll need about 8 to 10, depending on how avid of a sketcher you are, pieces of white, long 11 by 17 papers, which can either be found by the paper cutter or to the right of my desk in the paper station. You'll also need a colored paper, which are to the right of my desk. So, when we start, we're going to layer them together, set them down on our desk, and make a nice crease right in the middle. You might want to use a ruler or scissors on your desk to get a nice fold or crease in the middle part of your book. The next part is you are going to measure out about 1.5 inches or 1 inch between each of where your holes are going to go for your binding. We are going to stitch a binding today. So when we do this, we'll need to measure so that we have even spacing up our binding. If you have too many, it can take a long time, which is fine if you want a lot of detail. But if you have too few, your book can be flimsy or fall apart. So I've left several different colors of string for you. You'll want to use a thinner string because we're going to use small needles to thread our book. But before you stitch, I find it very helpful to use a thumbtack, because you can use the pressure from your thumb on the tack, unlike with the needle, which will poke you. And I go through with this tack the middle of the back of the book, everywhere where I've made a mark. So pre-punching the holes like this will help. I'm just using a thumbtack. I don't know if you can see it because it's clear. And I'm poking it through the holes that I've made all the way through. You might want to use a binder clip also to keep your pages aligned while you're doing this. So when I pre-poke my holes, it makes it really easy to put my needle through each hole, and I don't have to try and shimmy around it. You just want to make sure you keep your pages lined up. So now we're going to thread our needle. So we're going to get about at least an arm's width. Sometimes I get 2 just to be safe of our thread. And Mrs. Cox will have the needles up here. So you are just going to carefully thread your needle. If you need help, I'm sure someone can help you. Sometimes I moisten my thread just a little bit, or I get a different needle if the eye, which is the top part, is not big enough. So once I have it threaded, I don't need to tie a knot. I just need to pull this down. If I tie a knot, it's going to be harder to go through my binding. Now, we want to do an under-over pattern. So I'm pushing my needle through the back of the book, and it comes out the middle. And I'm going to leave a tail, which just means I'm going to leave a pretty long piece at the end because I want to be able to tie it, and you'll see how at the end. I'm going to go under-over down the spine of my book until I get to the top. And when I get to the top, you'll notice that the 2 ends of the string are on different edges. So to make our book stronger, we're going to go once up the spine and once down. And when you do that, it's going to make a stitch line that goes across the book. And if you've pre-poked your holes, this part should be nice and easy. If you haven't, you can still wriggle the needle through. It just might be a little more difficult and take a little more time. So you can see now that I have a row of stitches that goes up my binding, but it's only through every other. So now I'm going to go through here and I'm going to fill in the blank spots by going the opposite direction with my needle. And I'll know that I did this right if my threads end up on the same bottom part of my sketchbook. So you can see this shouldn't take too long, especially if you and a friend help each other out and go get different things. If you don't remember where the scissors are, ask. And if you take out scissors or needles, please return them, especially the needles. They tend to disappear because they are little. So I have one more stitch, and then I'm going to have a stitch all the way up and down my binding. And I'm going to have both threads at the bottom of my sketchbook now, hanging down. So I'm just going to cut those to trim them. And if you find any beads or have any trinkets that you just want to put on your sketchbook for fun, you can thread those into those bottom strings and tie it in a knot. Then you'll have your binding done. It'll be strong, there won't be any annoying staples, and it will look nice and professional, especially if you follow directions and measured. So as you can see, part of your grade is good construction and technique, a top quality finish, border and name, creativity, personality, and fun. So this last part, you guys really get to show me a little bit about yourself. We talk about using space in art, which means use the entire front of your sketchbook. Make this unique. Sketchbooks are super fun for me to go through as a teacher because I get to know them without even reading your name. Of course, you'll need your name on them to start, but when I see your sketchbook, I see a little bit of you. So make sure that you make the cover of your sketchbook something that represents you. Think about things you're interested in, your personality, or fun. For my sketchbook, I like to do my design on a white paper and then tape it to the front with clear packaging tape. Not Scotch tape, because that doesn't work. And when I do this, it creates a natural border. And a border just makes everything look framed and nice. So once I get this taped on nicely, it will have a nice finished appearance. And oh, sorry, I lost you guys for a second. And that will be good to go. So the principles and elements of art cards will be available to you. And when you're done with those, when you're done with this part, you'll want to write all your principles and elements of art on your book. Here's a sketchbook that I have finished. So it has my picture on front. I've used this packaging tape to adhere my picture to the front, and on the back I've written out all my elements and principles of design. That way when I'm looking at a piece of artwork, I know how to look at it. So that's the end of your sketchbook project. Again, make sure that you really put yourself into this. I encourage you to use scrap paper or watercolor paints or markers or colored pencils, crayons, or surprise me with something totally unique. Just make sure it will stay on the front and won't scratch or rip anyone else's artwork. So I hope you guys have a great first couple days of art. When you're done with this, you and Mrs. Cox will go through the sketchbook rubric together and see how you did on all the criteria we went over. Have a great day.